everyone, it's April Garwood from Banana Moon Studio. In this video, I will be showing you how to crochet my new Mountain Lake crochet blanket square, which is part of the Fall Feels crochet along. You can find out more about that crochet along with the link up here or with the link in the description of this video. But I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera around and show you how to make this ribbed crochet blanket square. To make the Mountain Lake crochet blanket square, I'm working with Cascade Yarns Pacific, which is a worsted weight blend of acrylic and superwash merino. To begin, we'll start with our usual slip knot. Now this is a square that is worked in rows to begin with, and then it's going to be edged with single crochet stitches when we're finished, so that it will be easy to attach it with the other squares into our blanket. But we're going to start by chaining 29. Alright, there are my 29 stitches. For row 1, we're going to double crochet in the third chain from the hook and in each chain across, and then we'll turn. And keep in mind here, as this note says, that your beginning chain 2 does not count as a stitch. So we are going to skip the first 2 chains. Now when I work into my foundation chains, I like to turn them over and work through these back ridges of the chains, because it gives the bottom of my square this nice looking edge. So you'll see me working that way on this square. So we skip the first 2. Here's my third one, and I will double crochet in this chain and each of the remaining chains for a total of 27 stitches. So when you finish your first row, if you're not feeling sure you did it correctly, count your stitches and make sure you've got them right. Another tip, if you struggle with knowing where to end your rows, when you do the first stitch of this first row, you can put a stitch marker in it right then after you finish it, so it's easy to find. And that's going to help you when you come back the other way in the next row. I finished row 1 and have double crocheted across my row. When I start row 2, I will be, that will be my first right side row. That's what this RS in parentheses means. So I'll start with a chain 2 that again does not count as a stitch. I'm going to half double crochet in the first stitch, and then I will front post double crochet in the next stitch, half double crochet in the next stitch, and repeat from the star across. So I'll be alternating between these 2 stitches. So I'll show you what those look like. Here's my chain 2, and I am going to turn now, which you can chain first and then turn, or turn first and then chain, either way. Okay, so to half double crochet, yarn over into the first stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And then the front post double crochet, we start with a yarn over. And then in this next stitch, instead of working into the top, I'm going to start here. From the front of the fabric, I'm going to go around the post of the stitch like so. And then I'll yarn over and pull up a loop, and yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and yarn over and pull through 2 loops. That's the front post double crochet. Then another half double crochet right here, and another front post double crochet right here. Okay, so I'll alternate those 2 stitches all the way across. I'm almost finished with row 2, and I've got just a few stitches left. So I want to show you how this stitch marker that I used over here is going to help us. It just makes it a lot easier to know when you have gotten to the last stitch. So it's right there, so I know that my next stitch is going to be my last for this row. So I'm going to take this out and place a half double crochet stitch in that last stitch. If you find that that trick with a stitch marker is helpful to you, then I suggest you always put it in the first stitch of every row as soon as you finish that first stitch. So that's a tip that you can use. I'm not going to continue with that just because I don't feel like I need it, but that is something you can do to help yourself if you're unsure of how to find the last stitch. Okay, so at the end of row 2, we are looking at the right side of our square, and you can see it has this really nice texture to it. Now we're going to turn, and for row 3, we start with a chain 2 that again does not count as a stitch. We half double crochet in the first stitch, we back post double crochet in the next stitch, half double crochet in the next stitch, and repeat from this star across. So let's see what that looks like. So we chain 2, that's not a stitch, yarn over and half double crochet in the first stitch. Now this back post double crochet, we're going to yarn over again, and when we do a back post double crochet, we actually are going to insert our hook around the post of the stitch from the back. So it's going to look like this from the front. If I kind of flip it here, you can see how it's going around the post of that stitch, but we start from the back. So then we yarn over and pull up a loop, and yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. Here is my half double crochet, and then I want to show you that back post stitch again. Yarn over, go from the back and go around the post of the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. Another thing I want to point out about half double crochet stitch, this is a half double crochet stitch, and I'm looking at the wrong side of it right now. Half double crochet stitch is a little bit different from other stitches in that the head of the stitch sits to the side of the post. So you can see how the post is here and the head of the stitch is kind of to the left of it. Over here, when you look at this half double crochet stitch, I'm looking at the right side of that stitch, and you can see how the head of it is a little to the right of the body. So as you're working into these half double crochet stitches, you can see the post of their stitch here, but you might wonder, is this the top or is this the top? It's going to be the stitch top that is slightly left of the post. not the one to the right, all right? So as you're working your half double crochet stitches here, you're looking for the top that is slightly left of the half double crochet post. All right, so I'll be repeating these 2 stitches across this row. I'm ready to make my last stitch of row 3, so I am going to yarn over, and then this is what I see here at the end. You can see my chain 2 on this side, and just like I mentioned earlier, the head of my half double crochet stitch is going to be slightly to the left of the post, so that means this is the top of my last stitch, and these are the 2 chains that I made to start the row. So I'll place the last stitch here. Again, if that is difficult for you, identifying where to place the last stitch, use a stitch marker as I mentioned in the first stitch of every row. Okay, so now I will turn this. Again, I'm looking at the right side, and you see we still have this nice texture. As we continue up this square, what we're going to have is ribbing. And it looks, you know, a little bit different than the traditional knit ribbing that we see, but this is going to be crochet ribbing. Now, from here on out, we have alternate repeating row 2 and 3 for pattern. And that just means that we're going to continue repeating these 2 rows in order to get this stitch pattern and texture that we've already started. And then it says I'm going to end with a row 2 repeat. I'm going to work in this pattern for a total of 18 rows. So you'll just be alternating rows 2 and 3 until you've worked a total of 18. And your last row is going to be a row 2 repeat, or you're going to be looking at the right side of your pattern when you work that last row. So I am going to finish up my square and come back when my rows of ribbing are finished and discuss how to put the edging on this square. I've finished 18 rows of my Mountain Lake crochet square now, and I want to take a minute and talk about counting rows in this stitch. So I find it easiest to count the rows in between the ribs with these stitches. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. You should have finished with a right side row and have your working loop over here. Another thing you might find easier to count rows in this stitch is you might find it a little bit easier to count them on the back because there's these really defined ridges here. So the first row is down here, but between each of these ridges there's 2 stitches, or sorry, not stitches, rows, 2 rows. So here's 1, and then this would make 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, 17, and then above this last ridge we have 1 more row to make 18. So that should help with counting rows. Now, because we are making a lot of squares to put together into one blanket, I wanted all of the squares to have stitches around the whole outside, and I wanted them to all be the same number. So we're going to edge this whole square with single crochet stitches with 25 stitches on each side and a corner chain space at each corner. So to do that, I have here under edging chain 1, and then with the right side facing, so we're looking at our nice textured side, turn 90 degrees to work across row ends, and use stitch markers to visually divide this edge into quarters. So it's kind of easier to do that. This is going to be the first side that we work down over here. So the way that I did that, and the reason you could work without the stitch markers, basically we need 25 stitches down this side. I just found it a little bit easier to crochet evenly when I kind of gave myself a a way to break that down and a guide to know, you know, how many stitches to put where. So I just kind of fold this in half with edges even, and then place a stitch marker in the edge of the fold right here. And then I just kind of eyeballed where this next one should go. So just kind of about halfway between this edge and this stitch marker, somewhere around here. And then eyeball one more between the stitch marker and this edge. So probably somewhere right about here. It does not need to be precise, but that's just going to make it a little easier to stitch evenly when you have an idea how many stitches to put where. Okay, so back into my working loop, and I will chain one, and then I'm going to turn it so that I'm ready to crochet down this side. I'm going to move this a little. Okay, now tips for crocheting along row ends. There is not a really precise way to work across row ends, but a couple of tips. I would not place your hook under just one strand of yarn and put a crochet stitch in there, because it's really going to pull that strand open and kind of make it look like a big hole like it just did right there. So always place your hook under at least 2 strands of yarn. This row right here and this one have a chain 2 on the side right here. You can see those. And then this here is the first half double crochet stitch of that row. I would suggest when you stitch into this row, placing your hook around, or I'm sorry, not around, but under the stitch rather than under the 2 chains, just because it will again want to stretch that open and kind of make a big hole there. Another tip is to just try to be as consistent as possible in where you place your stitches, because the more consistent you are, the more even and consistent your edging is going to look. So here's how we're going to start. We want to start by placing our first stitch pretty close to the corner. So I'm going to put the first one right here, and I want to try to place 6 stitches between, well, including this one, between here and this first stitch marker. So there's 1 and 2 and 3, and let's see, I'm going to put one here, 4 and 5 and 6. Okay, so like I said, this is not extremely precise, but having this guide with the stitch markers is going to help us make it look as even as possible. All right, and now I want to try to do 6 more before I get to this stitch marker. And if you know, if I've done 6 and I'm still over here, then I need to rip back and spread those out some more. If I have gotten all the way to here and I only have 4 or 5 stitches, then I need to rip back and add another 1 or 2. Okay, so here's 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and then I can take this one out. These little stitch markers, there are a lot of different options for stitch markers. These are my favorite just because they're easiest to use. There will be an affiliate link to buy these on Amazon in the description for this video. But there are a lot of stitch marker options, so don't feel like you have to use those. Okay, so 6 more before the next stitch marker. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we'll put the 6th one here, and 6. Take this one out, and now I'm going to do 6 more before I get to the end, plus 1 more. If you look at the instructions here, using the stitch markers to divide this edge into quarters, 6 single crochet across row ends for each quarter, single crochet in the corner. Okay, so I'm actually going to need 7 between here and the edge, but I want the last one right in the corner. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, and then I want my very last one. This is the first stitch at this in this row down here, and I actually want to put my very last stitch in the top of that, but from the side, because that's what's going to let me put it right in the corner. Okay, and then I'm going to chain 2. Let's go back to the pattern. So we have single crochet in the corner, chain 2. That's our first corner chain space. And then we're going to turn 90 degrees to work across the next edge. So I've done my chain 2 for the corner, and now to work across, this is the bottom edge of my square. So what I'm actually looking at here, these are actually not tops of stitches, they are actually my foundation chains. You could think of it as working into the bottoms of the stitches. For sake of simplicity, I have in the instructions that we're actually stitching into stitches. Technically, like I said, these are the bottoms of chains, but I think it works okay. So working across this edge, I'm going to single crochet in 8 stitches, and then I'm going to single crochet 2 together over the next 2 stitches, and I'm going to repeat what's in the parentheses 1 more time. So what's in the parentheses I'm going to do twice, 2 times. Okay, so we will go ahead and place our first stitch right here, because remember I talked about putting this one right in the corner, so we're same place here. So 1 and 2, and I suggest here, if you worked your first row like I did into the back bumps of the chains, then you have what looks like the top of a stitch right here, or it looks just like the tops of the chains. Work under both of those loops so that you don't leave a ridge on one side. Okay, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And now we're going to do that single crochet 2 together. This is a decrease, and the reason for the decrease here is because all of the squares are going to have 25 stitches across each side, and in order to get that to work out for us, even though we have 27 stitches across, we have to decrease just a little bit here, but it's going to be fine. Okay, so single crochet 2 together looks like this. You're going to go into the next stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. Then go into the next stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. So now you have 3 loops. You're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 of those. That basically just let you work 1 stitch from 2 stitches. So we decreased by making 1 stitch out of 2. So now again, we'll single crochet in 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And now we're going to do our decrease again. again, we'll go into the stitch, we'll yarn over and pull up a loop, into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3. Okay, and then we have single crochet in remaining 7 stitches. And by doing those 2 decreases, we will wind up with a total of 25 stitches across the side. And right here we'll make my final single crochet for this side. Okay, so once we finish that, we have a double star here. We don't need that right this minute, so we're just going to kind of ignore that for a second. Now we have chain 2 and repeat from the star. So here's my chain 2. When I come back to the star, I will turn 90 degrees to work across the row ends. I'm going to mark them with my stitch markers just like I did going down the first side. Okay, now we're going to again fold this in half. We're going to place a stitch marker right in the fold, and then we are going to eyeball where to place the other 2 halfway between the stitch marker and the edge, so that we have a guide for working evenly across the side of our square. Okay, so I've already shown you how to do this, so I'm going to stitch down this side just like I did when I worked this side. And so you do 6 in this quarter, 6, 6, and then you do 6 here plus 1 more right in the corner, which you're actually going to place in the top of the first stitch of this row, but you're going to do it like from the side. And then you'll do your chain 2 space for the corner, and you'll turn and you'll work across the top row just like we did the bottom. And when I get back to that corner, I'm going to show you what to do next. I've made my very last single crochet stitch of the edging and on this side, and I'm back to the corner where I started. To join the very last round, we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to yarn over and we're going to go into this first stitch and do a half double crochet stitch. Now let's talk about, before we do that, let's take a careful look at what we have going on in this corner. Here's the stitch I just made. This little bit of yarn here, that's the stitch I just worked into right here. This might look like it's your first stitch, but this is actually the chain 1 that you did at the start of the edging. This is your first stitch. And let's look at, see right here, these are like the little legs of that first stitch. Anyway, so your first stitch that you're going to join into is actually right here. So let's take a look at putting that half double crochet stitch there, and then I'll explain why we're doing this corner differently. Okay, so now I will yarn over, go into that first stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And let me grab some scissors so I can fasten off. I didn't have those handy over here with me. I always like to leave ends at least 6 to 8 inches long. The more you weave in, the more likely your project will not come undone. So yarn over and then pull all the way through to fasten off. Okay, let's talk about that half double crochet at the end. So I didn't just have to write it this way, and you don't just have to do it this way. You can chain 2 if you want to, and then you can slip stitch in the first stitch in order to make that final join. But most of the squares that we are going to use in this blanket have a half double crochet join at the corner. And the reason for that is because doing the half double crochet join in the corner means that if I were doing another round, when I start the next round, I would be in the middle of my chain space, and it allows me to make a crochet square that looks seamless because all of the joins are in the corner this way. So I feel like it's a good way to join the corners of squares. Now for this particular square, we don't have many corner joins because it's worked in rows and then edged. So it's not going to make a huge difference if you would rather chain 2 and slip stitch to join at this last corner, but just for the sake of being consistent with all the other squares in the Fall Feels Throw, I decided to go ahead and put a half double crochet join in this corner. So that's why I did it that way. Okay, so we have a finished Mountain Lake crochet blanket square, and if you're making the Fall Feels Throw, you'll be making 8 of these for the blanket that we're making in our crochet along. Again, check up here with this little card. You can find the details about the crochet along there, or you can find a link to that in the description below this video. And I hope you're enjoying the crochet along and learning lots of great things, and that you have a wonderful day.